worked out, theoretically. So we are now streaming. And I'm going to hit record here in a minute once I get my screen back. All right. So meeting called to order at 8:07. I'll do a roll call vote since we have folks remotely. I'll start with those joining us remotely, actually. Well, I'll get Tom when he comes back. So David Kirstein.
Here.
Ron, can you say here for me?
Here. I didn't hear you say here, or my name, so sorry.
Tom Loader.
Here.
All right, Anton Boder.
Here.
Ernie Milner.
Here.
April Seither.
Here.
All right, great. Let's see. First on the agenda is to approve our minutes from the last meeting. We have a motion.
I moved.
Anton moved.
Second.
I heard Ernie first, so I'm going to take Ernie second. We'll do another roll call vote. David Kirstein,
Yes.
Ron Allen,
Approve.
Yes.
Tom Loader.
Tom, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear. It was me. Yes, I approve.
Anton Boder,
Approve.
Ernie Milner.
Approve.
Okay. Any changes to the agenda? Did anyone? All right. Hearing none, we'll hop into the EV charging ordinance. So thank you to those folks who have taken the time to go through the ordinance. It is now in the hands of our planning staff. So they are in the process of reviewing. I have a meeting scheduled with them next week to check in on where things stand, but it is going before, the concept is going before the ordinance committee on Monday, the 28th. So we'll be kind of introducing the idea to them and giving them a bit about the background for why the committee is heading down this path. I'm envisioning a lot, like a brief presentation similar to what we did for the development stakeholders, kind of setting the stage where the auto industry is going and how municipalities have a role in that and encouraging EV adoption. So that will be coming up on Monday at 5:30. I believe it's 5:30. I'll confirm that. It's a virtual meeting. And just, again, no decisions will be made there, just kind of presenting the idea to them and getting some initial feedback from them. I think that this is something that has not necessarily been on their radar. So it'll be good to introduce it to them and get them kind of thinking about the idea before we present kind of developed language and recommended requirements. We will kind of give them a 30,000-foot overview of where the committee landed at last meeting in terms of what we're recommending for residential and commercial development, both for large-scale commercial or large-scale retail sales and service and the other commercial development. So that is my update on EV charging ordinance today. Oh. Our fearless leader has arrived.
Yeah. Good guy. So you are virtual.
We are.
I got up this morning and said, okay, I got it. I got a meeting, and I hemmed and hawed. I made flight reservations to Savannah, Georgia. And I say, oh shoot, I got to log on. And then I can't find the login stuff. Then I saw the meeting invite. It said town manager's conference room.
Oh, that's the placeholder
Shoot,
one.
It's not virtual.
So did you not get the invite direct
I
from Zoom?
probably did.
Okay.
I just,
Okay.
too many meetings. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Please.
It's fine. We actually were just getting started because we were having some technical issues with our sound and all of that.
Yeah, well,
stuff,
you're looking at a technical issue right here. I apologize.
It's hard when Wednesday feels like Tuesday and.
Good morning, gents.
So I was just giving an update on EV charging and that the ordinance committee will be introduced to the idea at their meeting on Monday.
I actually made that announcement to my colleagues on the planning board
Oh,
that
good.
we are moving forward and it's going to the ordinance committee for a workshop. I
Yeah.
call it a workshop.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. So I was just saying, we're introducing it to them. I don't know that it's necessarily been on their radar, so it'll be kind of like the introduction that we gave to our commercial stakeholders.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you want a couple of those booklets that I have to give? Are you going to be in person?
if I'm not, I can leave or provide them ahead of time.
I'll grab some. I have some in my car that you might as well just give to all the ordinance committee.
Okay.
I did think I gave some to town councilors when we had a workshop, a joint workshop, but at any rate,
I
they're
can see it
available.
again.
And I think I gave your tablecloth back.
Oh, okay.
Check with Angela.
I will.
She told me she was going to be here.
Like
I
I
don't
said,
see her on there.
it's hard when,
We didn't get, well, we actually had a quick meeting last night. Quicker, we were done it by 9:30.
oh, that's good. It is, like I was saying, it's hard when Wednesday feels like Tuesday and all of a sudden you've got a meeting, so.
Yeah.
So are there any other kind of comments or anything that we want to say about the EV charging ordinance? I think we're largely on hold until we get feedback back from the planning staff and from the ordinance committee at this point.
So you have, the planning staff hasn't fully vetted it yet
They
in terms of,
No, so Jay has taken a look at it, and he basically said he's going to try to work it into a format that would fit into the zoning ordinance, because it will likely be a zoning ordinance amendment. And so he just has had a number of other things happening, so it hasn't kind of hit his.
when he
his
says
schedule.
zoning ordinance amendment, what does that mean? Doesn't it go into chapter 405?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, it would be
Okay.
chapter.
So it would
405.
just be an insert into, okay.
Yes, but that chapter 405 will need to be amended to add that. in
Gotcha.
there. It'll be a similar process to how the solar ordinance kind of
It worked in, yeah.
worked in. Yep. So.
Okay, super.
So
Well,
would
thanks
this
for putting
be-
all that work
Yeah.
into it.
So the ordinance wouldn't be in time for big developments in towns like the Costco.
Costco, no, it's not gonna be there for Costco.
Well, it could be, depends on how long it takes Costco to
Well,
come and
that's
get
true.
site plan approval. They've only done site analysis and sketch, I think.
So, and it also
So-
depends on how quickly this process moves forward on the town side as well,
Yeah.
because, if,
Out of curiosity, are there any EV chargers in the downs at the present moment?
there are a few, like the apartment complexes, I think it's like one.
I haven't seen any. I've
There-
looked.
You'll have to look on some of the off or on-street parking. There's one as you go down, I think, down Scarborough Downs Road.
I thought it was,
It'd be interesting to ask, how many units did we build and how many chargers do we have to support those units? And it'll probably be in the neighborhood of 200 to 3.
Yeah.
Which is.
Any of the apartments have EV charging capability?
I think there is one space for like is it the Carriage House apartments?
They told us that they were putting in infrastructure for some. They were on plans. Not many.
And I'll just say, like, having a couple chargers at this point might be enough, but if the infrastructure is not there to easily add more when EVs become more prevalent, then that's a problem. And that's, I think.
Oh,
what
they're
we're
gonna
trying
lose
to-
tenants. Oh, they're gonna have to cost. It's gonna
Or they're
cost
gonna have to
more
rip
money.
up their parking lots to add them. If demand is
But
there.
hopefully this ordinance will be in place for the downtown district area, which is totally
Yeah,
not even master plan in terms of, what it's gonna look like in the breakout. There's still some room in innovation district. There's, we just saw a huge 120 unit apartment development last night on the corner of Muzzy Road and Gorham Road, in that big area right across from that coffee shop.
Yeah.
120 units going in there. They said they'll put chargers in, but I don't know to what level. Of course, they'll say anything as they're trying to get approval.
like at a minimum, put in the conduit so that,
Well, he said our philosophy is we typically, I think he did say a number like 40%. We make it capable.
okay,
That was part of their corporate, because they're a larger company that has properties in a lot of states. That was encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't do it, well, he'll be forced to do it.
At some point, or when they want to redevelop.
So anything we can do to speed the process up, making sure that we're intended to the ordinance committee and, we're available. I don't think we're in a position to be negotiators. All we can do is try and give them the information that makes them say, all right, this is a legitimate need. And if we're looking into the future, we need to be going in this direction.
Yep. So.
Can we just go back to the situation with Costco?
Mhm.
They submitted an initial plan and it called for 8 charging stations. Is that what we said? 8 or 9?
I think that's what was
8.
discussed at the last meeting, yeah.
And we're recommending 40.
Mhm.
So that's still, and that's been discussed. Is it something that Jay is aware of? And does he?
So Jay and I have a
Does he
meeting.
know the difference between what they've planned and what we're recommending?
He may not have made that connection yet. He and I have a meeting scheduled next week to kind of sit down and talk through some of that stuff. I know Angela's aware of it. I've mentioned it to Angela, but Jay hasn't necessarily been part of those conversations. And again, in terms of Costco and when they get their approvals and when this ordinance comes online, they may not line up. And until the ordinance is in place, the town really doesn't have any say in terms of what Costco is going to put in for EV chargers. So they could say 0. And as long as if we don't have an ordinance saying that they need to have them, then they don't need to have them.
But they're also asking for 295 parking spots.
Oh, they've come down.
I
800.
think that's what, maybe I got my numbers wrong there.
Yeah, they were
Costco?
far exceed. Costco was asking for
795.
795,
Yeah,
So
okay,
800, that's how we got.
yeah.
which is significantly higher than what our parking standards.
For
Right.
that square footage, yeah, so there's negotiations, if they want larger parking, which, planning board has the discretion to make based on a lot of factors, and a lot of it is we listen to the customer and say, well, what is your recommendation and what is your history? And they probably have a great deal of data supporting that number, but our ordinance says it's this. You want that, you're gonna have to do this. So, to my knowledge, on the initial plans, they had no chargers at all. But they
Right.
did say, well, yes, we do believe in that. It's a matter of getting both levels, level 2 and level 3 there.
So this will be ongoing, and if I can send around an invitation for the ordinance committee meeting, if anyone is interested. It's also on the town website, so you'll be able, it's hybrid, so you can participate or view remotely if you want. But
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to at least sit in and hear what they're saying.
Made a note. So do we have anything else with EV charging? All right, you can take it away, Rick, since you're here. I'll
Well,
stop.
did we do the minutes and everything?
We did all of that.
Oh, awesome. Then I'm not needed. Continue.
All right, so community action grants. If you'll recall, I kind of shared this idea or introduced this idea or opportunity, I should say, at our last meeting. The state has a request for proposals or request for application out currently to apply for community action grants to help municipalities and tribal entities get money to assist with implementing elements or projects that are related to the Maine Won't Wait Climate Action Plan. There are a number of steps that the town needs to go through in order to be eligible, including passing a council resolution, holding a community meeting, and doing a self-evaluation of kind of where things are, where the town is in terms of climate change and resiliency planning. So our community meeting is scheduled for tonight at 6 o'clock. It is a virtual meeting. We're all just saying how much we hate virtual meetings, but it was kind of the most streamlined way to make this happen on a very short notice. So I haven't checked to see how many people we have registered so far, but we did direct outreach to this committee, Conservation Commission, Transportation Committee and Long Range Planning. And information has been submitted to the leader. I didn't check last week to see if it made it in there. I was hoping it would be either in last week's issue or the one before. It is on the town social media, and it's on the town website as a meeting, as part of the meeting calendar. So I feel like we have at least 40 or 50 people registered at this point. I keep getting a handful of notifications of people registering every day. So the meeting agenda and materials are on the website, but we'll essentially be providing an overview of the grant process and grant opportunity. We'll go through the town self-evaluation. I've worked with public safety, public works, and our planning department to go through the self-evaluation and identify kind of where things are at. It does look like, in terms of emergency response, the town's in really good shape. Our public safety, our fire department has really good systems in place and plans in place for responding to natural disasters. So I would say that that's an area where the town is doing really well. But obviously there are other areas where we could improve, and that's what we're hoping to get feedback on from the public at tonight's meeting. There are a number of questions that we're posing to those who are participating. They're pretty general, kind of what is the town doing well? Where could we do better? What do folks think we should focus on in the short term? What do folks think we should focus on in the long term? There's also, as on the meeting agenda, there is a Google form, a link to a Google form where people can submit more information, and we'll put that in case they aren't comfortable participating in the meeting, or if they come up with something afterwards, or if they're not able to participate in the meeting. And we'll get that that link out on the town social media as well, so that people who might not be able to attend the meeting are able to provide input. And so because this is a very short turnaround, town staff have been talking about possible projects to apply for in this first round, and looking at the resiliency of Route 1, where it crosses the marsh, has really risen to the top of the pile in terms of ideas that staff have come up with. And a lot of that was as a direct result of the Martin Luther King Day storm, where where it flooded, and Public Works was plowing seawater off of Route 1. And that becomes more and more common, especially like in the wintertime with nor'easters and whatnot. So, and that's doing something to Route 1 is not on DOT's radar. They have basically told the town that they plan to just continue paving, and don't plan on doing any kind of reconstruction or upgrade or anything to Route 1. And in fact, if we lose Route 1 in a storm, they have indicated that they're not inclined to replace it, that there's a way for people to get around that area that is less than 8 miles. And that is typically DOT's formula for whether a road needs to be replaced or not. If there's an alternate route that is less than 8 miles, they'll consider the road unnecessary, and they won't replace it. So I don't think anyone in Scarborough, given our traffic and the number of people moving through Route 1 on a daily basis, I don't think anyone wants to see 30,000 cars going down Payne Road or anything like that. So
Payne Road is essentially lower
yeah,
sea level than Route 1.
yeah. So you got to think something eventually is going to happen there also. So we have been talking with DOT to try to get this on their radar and let them know that this is something that the town is interested in doing. Doing a comprehensive study to look at different sea level rise scenarios and what we should be planning for in terms of upgrade. So because the proposal or the application is due in about a month, that is likely the direction that we'll go in for this first funding round, but there's another funding round in September. And so really looking to have kind of the community input to help inform additional applications for future funding rounds and other things that the town should be considering and focusing on in terms of climate change and resiliency.
So are you pursuing the non-grant, the non-match grant, or are you doing the community climate and energy implementation grant?
It's it would be the non-match, the one that doesn't require.
Okay, so,
Because there is a section in there about infrastructure resiliency. And
Right.
so this would fall under that.
so then the activities that are associated with that are defined within the grant.
Yep. And it's essentially planning for
Okay, so
infrastructure
this is,
resiliency.
you're talking a neighborhood of around 10 grand?
So this will be, well, I think we'll probably apply for the full, I think we'll be able to make the case that this
You
is,
want 50?
we're gonna go 50 and see where we land, because it's going to cost the town far more than 50,000 to do a study and have a plan together for Route 1. We just did a similar process working with Cape Elizabeth on Sawyer Street, which goes across the Spurwink Marsh. And that process alone was $50,000.
Was it really?
And it was a very small,
Okay.
very small road, not much traffic,
That road's
minimal.
gonna get reclaimed as shoreland, isn't it?
It's entirely
Destined to.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually there's a public meeting with a joint public meeting with, it's a workshop with both councils from Cape and Scarborough coming up in mid-March to kind of present the results of that study and talk about next steps and how the municipalities want to proceed with that. So just thinking about that study was done 3 years ago on a much smaller road, and it was $50,000. So we're looking at an extensive process, especially if we want actionable outcomes from, which we do, from that process, so that we will know what our next steps need to be on Route 1. And it will likely be that this is going to be a town-led process and hopefully bringing DOT along.
Are you
with us.
when you say Route 1, I get that, but what about down Pine Point Road? You know, where the clam bake and then even where the Audubon, that gets flooded out constantly.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, there's, I mean, there have been a number of studies to identify kind of where our greatest weak spots are, and Pine Point Road, Black Point Road, and Route 1 are definitely, Route 1 is the number one, and then.
Because of the volume of traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's an evacuation route, you know, we have at least 30,000 vehicles passing through there a day. So, and the fact that DOT just keeps adding pavement to that road, and I mean, wetland soils are spongy, squishy, exactly. So it's just like building up pavement is only going to push
You're only increasing
the weight, right?
Yeah.
So it's really like, and
I mean, it's immensely better with the culverts that were put in years ago, but now because of the rising sea level,
right,
it's no longer effective.
yeah, the culverts are going to be overwhelmed at some
I
point.
can see it's like Martha's Vineyard, and the Cape going across.
Like the Bourne
bridge.
Bridge, yeah. I don't know that we'll get that, but I think a causeway is probably gonna be
Yeah.
what the recommendation ends up as. And speaking with Angela about her experience when she was town engineer or city engineer in Saco, DOT didn't even want to replace an existing bridge on one of their state roads in Saco. So the town ended up having to come up with the money and go through with that. So we can't imagine that they're going to be really excited about adding a bridge on Route 1. So
Well, if we're gonna do anything, now's the time, because we got that infrastructure money coming.
exactly.
And, yeah. Did the town council sign off on a resolution?
So the resolution will go to council for their March 2nd meeting.
Okay. All right, so, and that's before you have to put in the grant application?
Yeah, the grant
Oh, that's- you
application
got the
is
timing perfect then.
March 22nd.
This is great.
It's perfect.
You're just gonna make it happen, right?
We just have to have a
All the
community
pieces are falling
meeting.
into place.
Yeah, so I think, you know, it's a little, I wish that we could have had the community meeting earlier in the process so that more community input could be had in terms of this first application. But,
That would be good feedback for you to provide GoPIF
yep,
when they're looking for feedback, like, you know, you made the March, first pass on March and you wanted stakeholder engagement. Well, to have any meaningful, we needed a little bit more
yeah, I
time.
mean,
but-
they introduced this in December and the first, application period is end of March.
and-
Thinking that we can pull together a meaningful community meeting in 3 months and do all of these other intervening steps.
Well,
but-
the other good part is you're probably ahead of a lot of communities, so the pool may be low.
Yeah, we hope so.
Based on this, so
Yeah.
great job.
So I know we've been talking with Conservation Commission as well about this. They're very interested in resiliency and climate action, obviously, and we're in discussions of potentially looking at a climate action plan and resiliency plan for Scarborough, which I think would be great to have something tailored specifically for Scarborough. That may be something that the community would support for a next funding round so that we have good actionable steps. And I think that this group's energy plan would tie right into a climate action and resiliency plan. It would just kind of take it to the next level. And our sustainability plan was put together in 2017. And I think that there's been, we have a lot more information now than we did then when that plan was put together. So,
Maybe it's time to look at it again.
yeah. Yep. So, and I don't know if we want to discuss as a group, other ideas or areas of focus that the town should consider, for future community action grants, or even just, you know, projects or initiatives in general that we should be considering. I know this group, you guys, I love the fact that we choose a topic and that's what we focus on until it's finished. I really appreciate that about this group. So we did that with the solar ordinance. We're doing it with the EV charging ordinance. And so maybe there's enough on our plate currently, but just thinking about, you know, what item or issue do we want to tackle once we move beyond the EV charging ordinance?
Well, I'm pretty interested in water quality.
Mhm.
And there are a couple of things, so this is anecdotal and I haven't, you know, put together my thoughts, I've written them down, but one is we know stormwater overflow is a big problem in Portland.
Mhm.
You saw the construction that they have going on around the back cove. It's a multi-million-dollar, $10–20 million enhancement to their stormwater system because it seems that most stormwater systems are designed for normal use, but there's overflow whenever there's rain.
So the issue in Portland's a little bit different. We don't have the same situation here in Scarborough. So Portland has what are called combined sewers. So their system puts human wastewater and stormwater into the same system, and the stormwater in some areas of the city will go to the sewage treatment plant.
Mhm.
And when we do have rain events, the sewage treatment plant can't handle the combined storm or sewer, wastewater, and stormwater. And so all of it gets diverted. All of it gets diverted typically into streams. And EPA has come in and said, you can't do that anymore.
You're talking about Scarborough.
I'm talking about Portland.
Okay.
Scarborough doesn't have any of these combined systems. So none of our stormwater and our sewage is
Touch each other.
completely separate. So we are not under the same situation as Portland, where they have to now go through and separate all of their storm sewers and wastewater.
Okay.
So
Well, that's good to know, but I still see that there's an issue. Like I kind
there
of.
definitely is. I just wanted to,
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good.
That's one of the big things that's going on by the Hannaford in, by Back
yes,
Cove.
that code.
That's the big treatment of the, stormwater, right? It's
Right.
stormwater going there.
Yeah, so it's actually, it's containment. So they're going to collect the stormwater there and then bleed it slowly into the sewage treatment as
As it can take that load.
the treatment plant can handle it.
So
That is
just
one of their-
seeing that, like, you know, just made me aware of,
Yeah.
that there's a problem in some jurisdictions.
Mhm.
I still think Scarborough has some kind of problem because I kayaked in the marsh after a rain and it is unsightly.
Yeah, there's a lot of runoff. A lot of that, I think, is largely due to the amount of development happening in the upper watershed that comes down into Scarborough Marsh whenever it rains. So if it's brown and things like that, you're seeing sediment washing off of construction sites. And so the town is, I would say, more progressive than some others in this area in terms of that. And we have far more inspection requirements of our construction sites to make sure that before rain events, they're stabilizing as much as possible. And we're actually in the process of hiring another staff person to help do some of those inspections. So right now it's our engineer and contracted consultants that go out and do the inspections, and we're bringing on another staff person to take on more of that. But there's so much development happening in Scarborough that stuff falls through the cracks. And so by bringing on another staff person, we're trying to address that. And I will say that, so the town has a stormwater permit through Maine DEP, and we've got a new permit coming online in July, and part of the requirement there is to change our ordinances for construction to make it them much stricter in terms of site stabilization and things like that. So we're reducing the amount of erosion and sediment coming off of construction sites and things like that.
Right, good.
So
2
Which
weeks
is not
ago,
to
I was down
say
in
that-
New Orleans and I was saying, oh, look at that stuff coming from Minnesota. It's all the way down here.
Right.
Just, there's not
Yeah.
it's brown water
yeah,
through and through. Well, just,
But I take your point, but if you were talking about topics,
yeah,
I
no,
mean,
and
I still think that if we're looking for grant money, the marsh is a big part of the character of the town.
yeah.
And, our beaches,
Mhm.
and there are times where, our clamming on the beach is shut down by the environmental groups because of water pollution.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I'm not to say that, there's not more work that could be done. I just wanted you to know that like
things
stuff
are
is,
happening.
yeah, things are happening. And so I don't know, like in terms of community action grants, I mean, having a healthy marsh is only going to help our resiliency to rising sea levels and things like that. So, so I think that, the connection can be there. And Conservation Commission has been talking for the past several months about looking at our ordinances and thinking about what needs to happen in order to preserve the marsh and minimize the impact of development on the marsh. And so there may be, and again, I think all of this can be related to a climate action plan or some sort of comprehensive approach to looking at many different environmental issues that are all integrated and interconnected. But they're looking at increasing setbacks, reducing building footprint size, looking at opportunities for land conservation near the marsh and then in the upper watershed as well. So this conversation is tying into what Conservation Commission is interested in, which is good because I think any kind of planning process is going to be integrated among multiple town committees and stakeholders.
Doesn't this all redound back to the growth management ordinance?
Yep.
Where do we stand with that? I'm just curious, it's an aside, but how does this new apartment complex that's being contemplated over here on Mussey and Gore?
well, it's gonna have to go through GMO, and
How
so
does
it's
that-
gonna be
how
built
does
in
that
stages.
Back into growth management ordinance.
Yeah, they're gonna have to get the permits based on the number that are available, and, if they only get 43 1 year, then they can only build enough that would do
So
it.
you're
for
looking
43.
you're looking at a 20-year project here for 700 units?
120 units at 12 buildings, they could,
I'm
You
sorry,
know.
I'm sorry, 120 units.
yeah.
It's still a
But
long
it's,
time.
they recognize that Scarborough does have a GMO, and they're gonna have to compete just with all the other developers.
How is the Downs thing with the GMO shaking out?
I don't know. It's good stuff, good topic.
And that's a-
It all goes back.
That's
I
a
mean, these
council.
things all seem like.
Maybe
they-
April can give us an
That's
update
a-
on that.
Yes.
Well, I was just gonna say that the GMO too, like exempts so many of those units based on whether or not they're studios, 1 bedrooms, certain 2 bedrooms under a certain square footage. So if a developer is looking to put in a multi-family or multi-unit building, they're not necessarily applying for exactly the number of permits that they're looking in to put in residences. And so a project can move along a little bit faster if a lot of what they're planning to build is exempted by the GMO. Does that make
How
sense?
did the Downs conversation go? Because I know you had a workshop with the Downs folks.
Yep, so they, at this point, they haven't publicly presented any kind of number or building project build out in terms of how many units it will be. Rocky literally asked for a blanket exemption publicly. And so we still are in the process. The town council hired a third-party consultant to help us navigate the request in terms of whether or not what the Downs is asking for is in line with, what their consultant tells us is what is in line with what's best for the town. But that's going to be a long, I think a long process of trying to hammer out what they're exactly asking for and then what the threshold of the council is.
Yeah. Well, I think we have enough housing there for now, and let's get some business infrastructure in there before we start talking housing.
For sure. And so I think the next step of that is we have a workshop with our consultant, a workshop in an executive session. So that will be the next step for the council. And then we can talk about offering a counter proposal to the Downs.
Super helpful, April, thanks.
I mean, I don't know if anyone watched the workshop that they had a couple weeks ago where they came in. I'm not saying whether I agree with it or not, but their argument was somewhat compelling in that if this is going to be a downtown for Scarborough, and again, there's the discussion, is it a downtown for the Downs or a downtown for Scarborough? They need the community feel around it. And otherwise, it's just going to feel like another shopping center that Scarborough already has. So I understand where they're coming from in that regard, and that, you're essentially building a downtown from scratch, whereas most places it evolves over decades. And so in order for it to feel like a downtown, you need the people living there, the employment opportunities, the retail.
But it's also
aspects.
somewhat of a unique development because the radius.
Right.
There is a lot of residential already in
there.
the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And in order to migrate to a downtown, it's got to be both ways.
Right.
And until we see some commercial growth,
Yeah.
to support those that are living there now.
Yep.
How are you going to attract new ones to come and live in a downtown?
Yep.
So it's a little bit of
It's
who comes first?
there's lots of
the
chickens
house
and
or the-
eggs floating around.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, in addition to more businesses, I mean, a vibrant downtown community's got other things besides residents and businesses. They've got, cultural centers.
Yep, it's got,
We got,
Health.
and the whole thing of the community center just, I think, was a missed opportunity. I hope it doesn't.
I don't think that's totally off the table. It
still
was just the wrong time to put something in front of the voters to move forward with. But I do believe at some juncture, there will be something like that in downtown.
And then walkability too.
Yeah.
And, to have everything come in and off of Route 1 is a problem. There should be, Payne Road or Route 1,
Mhm.
but something that dissects the middle of it.
Well, now you're gonna get
parallel.
Haggis Parkways involved too. because there is actually a road going in.
Yeah, they were actually saying Haggis is going to be the main entrance into that area.
Yeah,
Okay.
because that's the way the
Which is
Wex,
also not
when it was
walkable.
gonna come.
No,
Haggis
it's
is
not.
also not possible.
We actually, they do have approval to start putting in that road and to go to 2-3 lots off the Haggis Parkway. So eventually that will become what was going to be called Center Street, but there could be some name changes. But Center Street was the road that was gonna go from Haggis up through the downtown district and into Innovation. And that may get changed a bit.
Well,
with this
hopefully
new
when
plan.
these roads get built, that they're wide enough
Oh, they're
to
complete
support
streets.
Yeah, they have to,
sidewalks for
Yeah.
walkability
and bike lanes.
and bike lane.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're complete
jog
streets.
So yeah, that, the
That's
town
key.
ordinance requires that now,
Okay,
so.
good.
Well, and it has for a while,
Okay.
so.
Well, the idea of us getting in, or you guys working really hard to get us through the March commitment, then there's that second round, which could evolve into actually implementing what the consultants tell us about the flooding plain and all of that. So
Yeah, I expect that to be, I don't know that we'll be ready for implementation in September.
then we can think of something else,
So, yeah.
because there's a lot of other
Yeah.
things on that. like-
Exactly.
Like town EV infrastructure
Yes.
is that, or, purchasing of school buses that are EV and those kind of things.
Yeah,
So we'll have to keep that on the radar too.
yeah, and I think it'll be helpful to hear what the community at large has to say about that, and then also, to find some commonalities or overlap with, the other committees that we specifically, targeted to participate. So again, it's us, this group, Conservation Commission, Transportation, and Long Range Planning. So, finding some overlap there, I think will be good for, moving forward with future projects also.
What is right now, what is the thrust of town concerns? What do people tend to think are priorities
According
for Scarborough?
According to the survey that was just done, the community survey, it
Yeah.
is development, too much growth happening in Scarborough, and traffic. So, climate change was fairly low on the list, like not even on people's radar.
How about taxes?
Those are
Property taxes.
always on people's radar, but I want to say that the top two from the survey were growth and traffic.
But if you really look at it, the growth in traffic, when you start to do mitigating issues, or you deal with those, it goes back to, smart, the built environment being constructed well and doing no harm to the environment with building materials and things of that nature. So, while growth is really big, adopting the stretch code, for example, would be a way to help mitigate the effects of the town's growth. So when they don't look at these kind of things, they're down on the list. They're really part of that. They just don't recognize that what you're doing for growth can be done to help address some of the climate change issues. But going to the stretch code is going to be a moot point, because we're going to the 2021 code anyway. As
In a
base
year,
code.
right?
Hopefully we're trying July 1, but realistically, it may be September 1st
Of this year.
of this year.
Oh, okay.
It's fast tracked. We're out of compliance. Newbeck is out of compliance with the law
Mhm.
now that the 2021 went out. We could go to the 18, but in a year, that will be outdated. So why do it again?
Right.
So that's why Newbeck just decided that they were going to pursue the 2021 as a baseline and then deal with a stretch code afterwards.
Mhm.
So stay tuned for that. That's coming.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah,
Wonder if Brian knows that.
I know. Should tell him. Tell him Newbeck is going to the.
Going to the 2021 code. All right. Anything else with this? Hopefully we see you all, or your faces on the screen tonight at 6. And if it's helpful, I can I can circulate the agenda. It's also, like I said, on the town's website, in the, right on the information in the calendar for the meeting. There are the links to participate in the webinar or just view it on YouTube. And then also the link to the agenda is there also that has.
And there's a Google
materials.
form you can fill out if you have any personal input you want to do.
Yep. And it's essentially the same questions that we'll be posing at the meeting. So if people come up with things after the fact, or if they're not able to join us, they can submit using the Google form as well. So if there's nothing else, we can move on to updates. April, do you have any other town council updates?
No, I mean, I feel like we did talk about a bunch of things that are going to be coming in front of council today. But you did a really good job covering in terms of process and, updates. I can't think of anything else.
Okay. Good, thank you. Rick, any planning board updates to share?
Yeah, we got word that they issued COs for Harbor Fish and Rosemont Bakery in the old public safety building. So I guess Rosemont's got a little bit of more work to do inside before they can officially open, but stay tuned. Those are going to open up pretty quick. And it's I think it turned out really nice.
It looks
the way
really
they
nice.
repurposed that building.
Yeah.
I suspect that we'll start seeing some activity behind it with a 3-story senior apartment building that Vesta Housing is putting in. The other thing was that big 12 building or 10 building with 12 units in each one apartment on the Muzzy Gorham. That's about it, really. There's little stuff going on, but nothing real big that I know of. Costco is still, the paper kind of said that the planning board rejected them. We didn't reject them. We merely said that, why don't you take a look at this siting, maybe position the building this way so that street front is a different view. And that's all we're asking, regardless, they've got to meet the ordinance. If they do, we can't deny them.
Right.
Simply because we don't like Casco or whatever. But I was a little upset when the headline was, Scarborough rejected. It kind of made a bad taste amongst, it wasn't that at all. Merely asking for a couple of versions of siting so that we could take a look at what it would look like from different roads.
Well, and how often does it happen that they get their approval at their first meeting
Never.
anyway? So
No.
like that's
And this wasn't even, this was so preliminary that, the other big thing was the Beach Ridge Speedway, which I don't know why the developer decided to put in these monstrous warehouses just to show what they could do on the land. Because that got everybody thinking, oh, humongous warehouses are going. No, that it was just an illustrative of what could go there if they wanted to. They have no idea what they're putting there right now. They were just trying to demonstrate that if they put warehouses there, here's issues within the septic and all of this, kind of doing a site analysis.
Out of curiosity, not to interrupt you, but to interrupt you, how do you get a residential neighborhood essentially zoned light industrial?
It's always been light industrial. It wasn't
Yeah.
zoned.
So we've always built houses in a light industrial zone?
No, in that particular, on the other side of the road, I guess it was residential and then it went to light commercial or industrial. I mean, kind of picture it now. Do you call that a residential use right now as a speedway?
Well, the Speedway's been historic. I mean, it's been there for decades.
Yeah.
So the zoning had to match the use, essentially, the use that it was.
I guess my big concern, and obviously I'm from other places other than just Maine, but this is like, reminds me of what Pennsylvania was back in the 50s and 60s, where you have lots of hodgepodge planning, hodgepodge, drop a warehouse, have a house, have something else, it's very uncoordinated after a while. I mean,
Yeah.
You drive through towns and you say, they tore down the historic hotel and they built a Rexall drugstore. You know, and you just say to yourself, what are these people thinking? It just seems to me, and obviously I only know what I read in the newspaper, but if you drop a warehouse facility right there on Holmes Road, it seems, it's not congruent with the area.
Well, you know, they're right next to it is the old dump. And then right next to that old dump is a commercial auto shop and, yeah. But Scarborough's a rather large plot of land that has all kinds of zones, but again, don't look at it as the warehouses are going there. It was just an illustrative example of what could go on there.
What was that property sold for, just out of curiosity? Anybody know?
I don't know. I'll go into the assessor database and find out, I'm sure.
No, I'm just curious.
But at
remember
any rate, that was.
about
that was
$6
the
million.
topic.
6 million? Thanks,
That
Tom.
was what I heard, but that was just over at the gun range where I'm a member. That was what we heard through the grapevine. So
You know, it ties in with conservation and sustainability.
Mhm.
And I mean, I guess this is also an issue for the land trust. But, you know, we have these open pieces of ground. Like, and I'm thinking like Mussey and Gorham Road, that maybe we don't, you know, maybe the town wants to keep some of these rather than just have them sold off. Not that the town owns them.
Right,
but
I was
mean,
gonna say the town is pretty limited in what we can do with private property.
I appreciate.
The land trust could buy all and leave it, but they don't have the money.
No, they don't have.
Well, and so I'm sure everyone has heard about the Turnpike project that is being discussed. The connector, the Gorham connector to connect Scarborough, South Portland with Gorham. And they said that the Turnpike Authority is actually buying up some of the land in that section of town. And they've shared that, you know, while they're buying much more land than they are actually going to need. So they are looking into putting the remaining land into conservation. That, you know, they need their 50-foot right of way for the road, and then the remaining however many hundreds of acres may be able to go into conservation. So I am hoping, and I know others in the town are hoping, that that's kind of the route that it takes, because that road is going to go through the headwaters of Red Brook, which is an impaired stream in Scarborough. So while the road isn't great, if we can get isn't great in some respects, if we can get additional land conserved and change Route 114 from a parking lot to a road that people can actually use, because there's another way to get from point A to point B, that would be helpful. So
Sometimes it's just the result that Portland can't grow any more. They can only build up. And so they're doing some of that, but it's the natural thing that happens. You got a big city and it's starting to get, the footprint's starting to go out.
sprawling.
Everybody wants to be near Portland, and Portland is got the cultural, the restaurants, and it's a desirable destination. And so becoming part of the suburban Portland is just what is going on in Portland.
And I think
They're in
that,
Scarborough.
and the pandemic kind of exacerbated that too, because a lot of people wanted to move to Maine when,
Yeah, we saw an increase
Yeah.
in population.
Yeah, I understand, you know, you take the position that all of this is inevitable. But if you don't have your thinking hat on,
Right, that's the smart growth.
while you go through
Yeah.
it, it becomes inevitably it becomes a mess.
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
what it
remember
becomes. It
sprawl,
becomes a
the-
hodgepodge of miscellaneous crap is
Yep.
what it becomes.
So, you know, we did sprawl. We used to do these pocket neighborhoods all around, and then they got so many that there's only one road to have them all, and now you got the traffic impact. What's better, build out or build up?
Everywhere I've lived, this has been the situation. Delaware. You have all of the development that happened in Hookessin, and it was coming. Now you don't know any of these roads, but in Delaware, a lot of residential development happened in Hookessin, and all dumped into 48, came down to an intersection, and it went blam. Everything stops like mud, and people look at it and go,
What happened?
"What happened? Why wasn't anybody thinking about any of this stuff?" You know?
Well, that's why we do these kind of things.
I know, and none of this is not actionable, you know, I mean, I'm just talking at this point, but I mean, I think these are bigger level issues, and I think the growth management ordinance is something very valuable. That's not something that should get waived willy-nilly every time you've got a project that comes along and says, I've got to have this. And since I'm preaching,
It's good to have you back.
towns grow organically. They're not manufactured. We don't come in and say, we're going to manufacture a town center. People have reasons to be in certain locations, and that's why it evolves in that way.
You done with your sermon?
Furthermore, sorry. It's just, I mean,
Can we pull that podium over here and maybe?
Or a soapbox,
let
maybe?
me stand on the chair.
No, I think you're putting into words what a lot of people
You
are
feel,
thinking.
yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there is a certain sort of conceit. You know, we talk about central planning and the Communist Party, and they're going to manufacture a 5-year plan, and they know where everything's going. Things evolve, as you've mentioned. You know, there's
Devolve.
organic evolve,
Devolve too.
then
I
they
mean,
devolve. Yeah.
You know, I take your point because, you know, I'm from away, it's mid-Atlantic states, and in 20 years of development in Montgomery County, Maryland, we went from a pristine rural area to gridlock. Total, you don't want to leave your house because you pull out of their development and you're stuck. Just getting across town went from a 10-minute drive to a half-hour drive. And to get into the city went, my time in the career, you know, went from a 40-minute drive to an hour and a half on a good day. You know.
So are there
it's
people
crazy.
here who have been in Scarborough long enough to remember when the Scarborough Downs exit on the turnpike was seasonal?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm
yeah.
not putting my yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's been a lot of change in a really short amount of time.
Yeah.
Yep. So, all right. Well, on the happy planning board news discussion.
Oh, there's all kinds of things going on.
Stop it. Stop meeting.
I already touched on a bit about Conservation Commission and how, again, they're very interested in the community action grants and maybe looking for opportunities to work with other town committees on some planning processes and thinking in terms of resiliency, climate change, conservation, land conservation, things like that. So we'll keep you apprised of that. Oh, and as we were talking, I also wanted to share, Jay asked me to put together kind of a status of the solar ordinance for the ordinance committee's March meeting. So I will probably have that to share with you all in March, just
The status, you mean which,
where things are currently,
the
which
3 projects I think got approved, or was it 2?
I think there's 2. So
Two
there have
projects got
been four applications, right? And 2.
2 actually got approval before the December deadline.
Yep. So, so just kind of giving a report out on.
The neat part, one of those is going to benefit the high school or the Scarborough schools. So that'll be nice.
Yep. So I'll share that. Should have that ready for the March meeting to share with you all. And I think that's the last thing
Wow, love it. We had an efficient meeting.
it was. There's a lot of kind of
Well,
giving updates on where things stand.
depending on the outcome of tonight's public hearing or whatever you want to call it, dialogue, let us know how we can support you as you put this package together.
Yep.
I think you're going in the right direction with the needs of the floodplain, I think is really critical.
Yeah, good, thank you. And the application deadline will be the day before our March meeting, so, so we'll have a kind of where things landed on that. Obviously, we won't know anything at that point, but just kind of letting you all know where.
Do you think there are gonna be any, now look at April, when I say this, any reluctance of the town council to not do the resolution?
So Tom has already been speaking with town leadership about it, so, or council leadership, so I think that it's on their radar. It's been modified since what you all looked at last meeting, and Tom said that he's got some more edits to get to me also, so I think, I think it'll be in a form where they will support it.
Good.
And again, it's the minimum requirements basically say that the town is interested in pursuing these community action grants, and these are kind of the town priorities. So it's free money coming into the town. So
And I'm sure those are kind of the council's priorities too.
Yeah.
I mean, they get it.
And
they get it.
it's great that we're having these conversations, because I've been wanting to have these conversations for, the nearly 4
We
years
have
that I've been
April to
here.
make sure she can put out any fires. that get-
Stranger things have happened. That capital is like the Wild West some nights. So who knows? But
Well, we're glad to have you on the right side.
I have not heard from other counselors, and this is on Jamie's point. Like, this is people's radar. So I have not heard any resistance to this, and I haven't really fielded any, in-depth questions on it. And so hopefully this is one of those that with a good presentation and reasoning and justification, we can just say, great, thank you so much for your hard work, and everyone will cast a vote.
Great. That's encouraging, April.
And if it needs to go through 2 meetings, we'll still have time. So, because the second meeting in March is on the 16th, so that will still give us time.
We'll still get it in there.
Yeah.
Make it happen this time.
So,
Well, super.
so that's all I've got.
Anything you want us to do between now and the next meeting? Anything you want to start digging into again? Or something else to keep you from getting bored?
Right. I think I'm good for right now. And
Okay.
like you said, I may be kind of just shooting an update in terms of ordinance committee after next week and letting you all know where things stand with that. Maybe we may have some outcomes from that we need to work on or be thinking about ahead of the next meeting. And I can give an update on ahead of time on where the grant status is also.
Is David on?
He had to leave early.
Oh, okay.
yeah,
David and
how was
I did
Project
the,
Grace?
yeah, it was wicked cold, wicked
Windy,
cold, wicked.
windy.
It's the first time I said, well, I'm leaving my mask on even though I'm standing outside because it helped keep us warm.
Yeah, right.
It was nice that I got a lot out of talking with Nancy, who was next door from the library, and some of her plans and ideas. Not a lot of traffic, but at least we had the tablecloth, and the town people that drove through realized that we do have a sustainability committee, and they're willing to stand out in the freezing cold. And they look like a bunch of idiots, but I did hand out a few of those, the booklets, and, I was glad that we at least showed support to Project Grace.
Mhm.
And I think if anything that, I know Steph was glad to have us, and they made accommodations for us. So thanks for making that arrangement.
Sure. I'm glad that you guys.
We had a few citizens come up and chat, but.
Did you
they
enjoy
all
any
wanna
of the
give
chili
you-
and chowder?
Huh?
Did you get any chili and
I
chowder?
left, my hands were so numb, and, no, but I appreciate what maybe our town councilors go through as they're going through the Hannaford store or whatever, getting earfuls from colleagues and constituents and those nature. So it always reminds me of the role that we as volunteers end up playing, when sometimes that's not what we really bargained for.
Mhm.
But
So you got an
you
earful. of
hear it
things?
all. You hear all the bad stuff and never the good stuff. And you just got to keep it in perspective that those people that are doing that have a need to let it out. And so I just let them go. But in some cases, we don't do anything right.
Well, thank you for being there to hear though, it's that
Well,
lovely
thank David,
feedback.
too. He was a trooper. We were freezing.
Well, it's nice. I mean, as awful as that is to hear, it's also nice that we just had the community survey and it sounds like, you know, while there's always more work to do, like in general, the residents of Scarborough, like feel like this is a good place to be. So.
It's nice to hear this conversation. I used to hear a lot about, well, nobody tells us anything. We're always left in the dark. And I've really seen a big increase in the town's efforts to communicate more of what's going on and in a broad spectrum of
Right.
ways. The website is always up to date. It's always got the information. You know, with the advent of virtual meetings and YouTubes, you know, there's no excuse for people to say, well, I didn't know, or I wanted to say something, or, you know, where can I get more information? It's nice to say, well, you can go listen to our meeting. You're invited to our meetings. You
Right.
can hear our meetings. And, you know, so I think communication within the town through the town council has really picked up. And I think people recognize that.
That's good. Good to hear.
There was a citizen, a woman who came to one of our meetings because she had a concern about idling.
Mhm.
Yep.
Isn't that coming up as an issue? Isn't there something being done with that? I don't know if we were.
Yeah, so I,
Circle back with her on.
we have not circled back with her. I worked with our communications person to get information out, both in the town newsletter, in the leader, and on social media. I've spoken with community services. They're really hesitant to put up signs because there are just signs everywhere. So there is more that, you know, we need to think more about how we get information out to folks about idling and not doing that, other than signage where it's happening, because people kind of go blind to signs. But I mean, she brought that to us. We've done some with it. We can probably do more. We've got other irons in the
It's such a
fire.
hard thing to.
It is. It's behavior change. Behavior change is really
Yeah.
hard to get at, and it's
That family waiting for their student to get dropped off from a 9 o'clock hockey bus that parks into the and you know, and they're waiting 15, 20 minutes. They're running their vehicle because they want to stay warm. Yeah. Tough. Well,
anything else?
I'm glad to get out of here 15 minutes early.
All right. Perfect.
Anything from the group out in virtual land?
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess the answer is no.
Thanks.
The answer is no.
Hope to see you tonight. And if not, we'll see you next month.
Yeah.